Cleopatra, the last pharaoh. Part 4. Let's summarize briefly. Cleopatra manifested herself as a pharaoh at the beginning of her term in Egypt and particularly promoted traditional building projects in the religious sector. It is fitting that she was reported to have spoken Egyptian in a relaxed manner, unlike her predecessors. The queen came onto the stage of world history in 48 BC, when Caesar was in Alexandria. She smuggled herself to Caesar in a laundry bag or a roll of carpet, and won him over in the throne disputes that she had with her husband and brother Ptolemy XIII. Fought as an ally. After their victory and the death of Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra was immediately married to her younger brother, who now ruled together with her as Ptolemy XIV. The connection between Caesar and Cleopatra was not only politically sustainable. Less than a year after Caesar's arrival in Alexandria, probably on September 6, 47 BC, the son of Caesar and Cleopatra was born, who, significantly, was given the name of his father, but is usually called Caesarion in the texts. However, the father had already left for Rome in April of the same year to fulfill his statesmanship duties there. Presumably immediately after Caesar's departure, Cleopatra began building the Caesareum in Alexandria, a cult building for Julius Caesar. This was piquant, because the divine worship of a living person was common in the Orient, but frowned upon in Rome, as was the polemic of Cicero shows that the Greeks considered even men to be gods. Until the 19th century, the location of the Caesareum was marked by the so-called Needles of Cleopatra, which, however, were only erected by Augustus in front of the city's imperial cult area. Today the two obelisks stand in New York and London. Furthermore, the philosopher and theologian Philon described the sanctuary as it looked in 39 AD. None can be compared to the sanctuary of this Sebastin, the temple of the landing Caesar in the harbor equipped with safe anchorages. It is particularly high and particularly eye-catching, filled with votive gifts, pictures and statues in silver and gold like nowhere else. It has a vast sacred precinct, furnished with porticos, libraries, meeting rooms, sacred groves, gatehouses, wide open-air squares, in short, with every lavish architectural ornament there is. Since the new Roman rulers after 30 BC when they used the building for their own cult in the 1st century BC, it is doubtful whether this magnificent furnishings dates back to Cleopatra. The mere fact of Caesar's cultic veneration in Alexandria before his murder shows the queen's intention to implement her partner in Egypt and thus contribute to securing her and his rule in the east of the Roman Empire. With her rule in Egypt secured, Cleopatra moved to Egypt in 46 BC to Rome and stayed there probably with an interruption until shortly after Caesar's assassination. 58 She was accompanied by her brother and husband, Ptolemy XIV, and her son Caesarion. They resided in the haughty Cysares, the gardens of Caesar on the other side of the Tiber, that is in today's Trasteva. In doing so, Caesar once again provoked the Roman establishment, the senators. After all, he was officially married to Calpurnia, so he often lived in bigamy. And not only that, Caesar had a golden statue of Cleopatra erected in the temple of Venus Genetrix, the progenitor of his family. She even stood right next to the iconic image. This may be seen as a counterpart to the temple for Caesar that the pharaoh built in Alexandria. Caesar was a god in Egypt through Cleopatra, and Cleopatra was a goddess in Rome through Caesar. Although we don't. If there is no further information about the appearance of the statue, the materiality of gold suggests that it was depicted in Greek iconography, as gold and ivory statues have been documented as cult images in Greece as early as classical times. Furthermore, it would certainly have been noted by the classical authors if the statue had shown Cleopatra as an Egyptian in the Venus Genetrix temple. As Egyptian as Cleopatra may be in Egypt, in Rome she was Greek or simply the queen, as Cicero called her while avoiding her name. After Caesar's death on the Ides of March 44 BC. In 400 BC Cleopatra retreated to Alexandria. The experiment of uniting the Occident with the Orient in the couple Caesar and Cleopatra had failed. Shortly after their return, Ptolemy XIV also died, probably not without her involvement. This paved the way for Caesarion to be enthroned as Ptolemy. But Cleopatra did not remain alone for long. In the turmoil after Caesar's death, two potential successors gradually emerged, c. Julius Caesar Octavianus and Marcus Antonius. She met the latter in the fall of 41 BC. BC in Cilician Tarsos. Descriptions by Roman writers come from later times and may be exaggerated, but it is obvious that Cleopatra consciously used her charms to win Marcus Antonius. But as with Caesar, it was not just about eroticism, but about the myth of power. Antonius had already discovered this when he visited in 41 BC. BC moved into Ephesus as the new Dionysus. The Egyptian woman cleverly took advantage of the encounter with Cleopatra that followed shortly thereafter by dressing up as Aphrodite. In doing so, she continued the tradition of the mythological exaltation of interpersonal relationships. Through sibling marriage, the Ptolemies aligned themselves with Isis and Osiris, or Zeus and Hera. Cleopatra built a cult building for Caesar in Alexandria, while the queen received the statue next to Venus Genetrix in Rome. Finally, Marcus Antonius, who, ironically enough, was married to Octavia, Octavian's sister, suffered adultery disguised as a connection between Cleopatra Isis and Antonius Dionysus, or Antonius Osiris. In the Greek east of the empire this would hardly have taken offense, as the deification of people had been common there for centuries. In Egypt, every deceased person became Osiris or Hathor after successfully completing the judgment of the dead. In addition, Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, gave himself the nickname New Dionysus. On the other hand, the behavior of the Roman general in the capital was an affront, as Octavian's propaganda, handed down by Cassius Dio, shows us. Who wouldn't cry when they hear and see that Antonius himself, the two-time consul and multiple emperor, who, together with me, was entrusted with the leadership of the state, and that so many cities and so many legions were given into his hands? That this person has now discarded all forms of life of his ancestors and has instead emulated all foreign and barbaric customs, that he neither shows honor to us nor to the laws nor to our fatherly gods, but pays homage to that woman like a kind of Isis or Selene, and her children Helios and Selene is called. And finally he himself took the nickname Osiris and Dionysus, and after all this, as if he were the lord of the whole earth and the whole sea, gave away entire islands